Hey Sheikh Omar, what's the purpose of hijab?
Hijab, that's a good question. I wouldn't say that there is a purpose. There are two, three elements to the idea of hijab. First is that, every religion, every faith, every ideology has its, you can say, its signature by which you know that this is something unique. And the signature of Islam is modesty. So it's not just being modest. So for example, let's say some male or some female, and by the way, men also cover their head, because the idea of covering itself is a sign of something sacred. If you ever notice, like the Kaaba is covered. When religious women like nuns cover themselves, why? Because it's a sign of sacredness. You have the Eucharist, in which you eat from the body of the Holy Christ. Amongst the Christians, you cover it. Even in Jewish religion, things like their Taurat and their special things are always covered. When something is covered, it means it's sacred. It's beyond bounds, right? It's beyond limits. Now we live in a world where we believe everything is within limits. You can do anything. You have freedom. But sacredness is the idea that certain things are beyond limits. So women are sacred in Islam. In fact, one way to understand this is the word haram itself, which means forbidden. And the mosque, the most sacred mosque in Islam is called Masjid al-Haram, the mosque that's haram, which means it's sacred. Something is sacred because something is forbidden. Haram means forbidden. Haram also means sacred. So there's something sacred, like for example, alcohol is haram. It's forbidden. But because your aql, your intelligence is haram, sacred. So something is made haram, something is made forbidden because something is sacred. So in that regard, just keep this in mind. It's been the human tradition in different faiths that whenever we feel something is sacred, as human beings, we cover it, okay? We put cloth over it. And this is true in across the board of the Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist religion, all the different faiths, that you always hide what is the most precious thing. Okay. After that, second thing is the brand or the signature of Islam is modesty. And not in the sense of, a female can say, I'm modest, I cover myself, I'm pretty decently covered, I'm not wearing clothes like somebody that wants to show off themselves. And that's true. So there are different levels of modesty, but the level of modesty that Islam wants to show is to actually promote modesty. So it's not just the person's covered modesty, but the person is promoting modesty. And that state of being, your uniform has a big effect on you. So if you're wearing the uniform of a cop, your uniform of a doctor, or whatever uniform you're in, makes an impact on your mentality. It makes an impact on who you see yourself as. And so when women cover themselves, this choice that they make to cover themselves has many aspects that also reflects right back on them. It reminds them of who they are. When a woman is wearing hijab, she has to think twice before she does something wrong. A girl that's going to wear hijab, is going to cover her head, is going to think twice before she goes into a bar, because she knows that going into a bar and covering yourself just doesn't fit. So that's another aspect. Now, there are plenty of other benefits of wearing hijab. For example, you may know this or may not know this, but what is the greatest cancer? The most prevalent cancer is skin cancer. Do you know why skin cancer happens, particularly in women? Happens because of too many sun rays on the skin. Well, hijab protects you from that. So, if you want to talk about the benefits of hijab, there is probably more than 100, just on the idea of doing it. But as far as why we do it because it's a sign of something sacred. Women are sacred in Islam, unlike what the media likes to portray. A woman is either your mother, your sister, or your daughter. And it's so funny because, it's like, they always have these TV shows, right, where the father never wants his daughter to date, or is against his daughter dating, right? But it's okay for me to do it, right? It's okay for me to date and do whatever I want, but not my daughter, right? And so if you watch Bill Cosby with his daughters and other programs where there's a daughter and she has to go out and how the father always reacts, right? So that's there because in Islam, every female is seen either as a sister, as a mother, or as a wife. And so if you treat every girl you meet as your sister, you're going to respect her. But how does that happen? Because the fact is, now this is the fact, women like to say, oh, we're not objects. But here's the fact. A guy's eyes will always see women as objects. That's the truth. You know why? Look, think of it this way. Guys get aroused by seeing. Why do you think the pornography industry, of all the magazines that they sell, Playboy and so on and so forth, they're sold in the billions? Why? Why? Because guys get stimulated by seeing the same way women get stimulated by touch. So just imagine this. What is for a guy to see is equal to for a woman to be touched. So the excitement that a female feels when she's being touched is the same arousal that a guy feels when he's looking. So now when you consider this and you think of the idea of hijab, it makes complete sense. Look, Freud, the father of psychology in many ways, says what? The greatest human urge is sex. So are you going to let this greatest urge just go uncontrolled? You're going to let this greatest urge of human beings just go uncontrolled, having no limits? No, there have to be limits. There have to be parameters in which that are also healthy for society. And so what are those parameters according to Islam? Those parameters are that a female covers herself in a proper way, including her chest, and covers her head. And there are stronger opinions than that, which I tend to agree with. And also some people have the opinion of covering the face, which again, I think it is better to even cover the face, especially if she knows that she is going to raise eyebrows. The other thing is that very important that, if you are going to hire a secretary, right? Are you going to hire the most beautiful one, or are you going to hire the one based on merit, who's most capable? What hijab does is it takes the idea of beauty and it equalizes it for all the women. So let's say if there are 10 applicants and they're all wearing hijab and they all want the job of the secretary, now her body being an object, a pretty smile for everyone to look at, what some people call eye candy or candy eye, I forget what they call it. Now she'll be hired not based upon how attractive she is. Now she's going to be hired based upon the merit. A female should be hired based upon the merit. How do you do that in a society? How do you do that? You can only do that if they're all wearing hijab. You can only do that if you tell them, okay, you have to tone down your you can say dress to signify modesty. That will force the interviewer, the hiring person, and the female herself that she has to present herself not based upon her looks, but she has to present herself based upon how much of a merit she has. The other thing I want you to consider is, it so often happens that, in psychotherapy, a female that is now in her 50s or late 40s, she's complaining about, oh, guys used to be so attracted to me, and they used to, I've heard from women once they become Muslim that they can actually feel how they can, because women are very intuitive, and they can actually begin to feel how less eyes are looking at them, making them realize that, oh wow, I had a lot of eyes looking at me. Women have this sense of intuition, but the point I'm trying to make is that when so this lady that's sitting in a couch with a psychotherapist, she's not thinking, oh, I'm 40 years old now or 50 years old now and I don't look pretty now, and all her self-image and all her self-esteem comes from how she looks. Instead of, her self-esteem is based off of these magazines that ask women to become what is impossible for most women to become. And so, would you rather have a society like that, or a society that makes her sacred, a society that doesn't put all the emphasis of her as an object, a society that forces society to look at her based upon her merit, and her self-esteem doesn't come from what she's, from the lack of her dress or her attractiveness, but rather she is known for her morality, for her, and puts her at the level of merit and forces people to look at her for what she's worth not based upon attractiveness, but based upon what she's actually accomplished. So these are just, some of the reasons why, and there are reasons why when Allah says something, when God says something, there can be infinite reasons why He said it. And there will be infinite reasons for why He said it. The individual reasons of why He says something, the wisdom of it is beyond what a human being can articulate.
All right, thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
You're welcome.